Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual free thinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Laura Wink, your worship associate for this morning, and the service today will be led by our minister, Eileen Casey Campbell. Thank you to everyone on this morning's worship team, including music by Bill Mells. This is going to be an intergenerational service today. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign a visitor's book in the entryway, and whether it is your first visit or your 1,000th, we are glad that you came. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel, and we plan on continuing with this hybrid worship service throughout the church here. So you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or on YouTube. To help us connect better with our friends watching from home, please turn and wave to the camera. Hi, everybody on Zoom. At the end of the service, we will invite our friends on Zoom to turn on their cameras and return the wave. There are a few announcements to share. Early voting is now open in New York. See your county's Board of Elections website for times and locations. And please join us after the service today for our social and environmental justice meeting, where we will go over what we learned from the climate justice revival and start making plans and setting goals for the rest of the year. Karen has an announcement regarding that.
We will also, after the service today, for anybody who is interested, be doing a little mini workshop about how to engage your friends and neighbors in the importance of voting. There will be role playing, which I think will be kind of fun. So we'll just kind of gather anybody who is interested so we can do that together if you'd like. Thank you.
Hi, happy Halloween. And Light Hill is our local comfort care home hospice. They have a fundraiser every year where they have luminaria bags beautifully displayed all over Kershaw Park. And we have Monday's the last day, tomorrow's the last day. If you would like a bag with the name of someone you have lost and a beautiful candle in it to be part of that, I'd be glad to take that information from you and make that happen. Thank you.
I just want to give one last announcement, which is a giant thank you to everyone who helped make our trunk or treat event a possibility yesterday. We had about 83 participants, 20 or so of whom were our own members, and the rest were members of the wider community. And so thank you very much for everyone who donated their time and their effort and their treats and their trunks. Thank you so much.
Are there any other announcements? Okay, as we prepare to be fully together, I remind us all to silence our phones and devices, and we now enter a space of worship. Okay, it is chalice lighting time, and I'd like to invite Rory up. Rory, I have to stay by the microphone, so you're kind of in charge of the candle. And I'd like to talk a little bit about Rory as he's lighting our candle. He's 8 years old. His favorite color is blue. A fun fact about Rory is that he loves art. And we are grateful that he came and did the challenge for us today. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. Welcome to our annual Memory Tree Service. As you've already heard, it's a service, all of which is for all ages. So we'll all stay together in this room for the whole service. And we will, just as a little content warning, mention death, because this service is about loss and grieving, and so that will come up. And the first story that I want to tell you starts with a death. And it's a story from when I was a hospital chaplain. I was doing an overnight shift at Albany Hospital, and I got a call to the emergency room at like 3 in the morning. I didn't get a lot of information from the call. I got a page, and I called, and they said, "Can you come down? We have someone in the waiting room who's being belligerent." And I thought to myself, unproudly when I think back on it, shouldn't you have called security for this? Why did you call a chaplain for a belligerent person in the waiting room? And so I got down to the emergency room, and most of the way woken up, and I saw that there was indeed a woman. I don't know if I would describe her as belligerent, but on the floor of the emergency room lobby, on her knees, wailing. And I quickly got the story from all the different parties involved, that this woman's son had died. He was back in the emergency room. He died as a result of community violence. He was a young adult. And she was on the floor, pounding the floor with her fists, screaming. And security was there, actually, blocking the doorway to the emergency bay where her son was. And they said to me, she needs to be calm and orderly if she's going to come back here. She can't behave like this and cause a disruption to the entire hospital. And again, unproudly, my first thought was, how do I help this person to calm down so that she can go back and see her son and say goodbye? And I thought that through for a minute, and I started to approach her, and then the lessons from the minister who trained me as a chaplain started echoing in my head. And the thing that he told us every day, over and over again, was your job is to let the heart have its day. Your job is to let the heart have its day and let the machine of this hospital do what it does, but somewhere in there make room for human hearts to have their day. That is your job, and you can't do any helping or healing or supporting if you're not doing that. So I stepped back for a second, still like groggy, 3 a.m., from going to this mother to try and get her to be calm and be orderly, and I decided that that wasn't my job. And so I went to the security guards standing at the entrance to the emergency room, and I said, she's going to come back to see her son. And I wasn't sure, and I think they weren't sure in the hierarchy of the hospital who was actually in charge, because they kind of stared at me for a minute, and I kind of stared at them, and they said, she can't come back like this. And I said, really like putting a bet out there in the universe, do you have kids? And one of them said, yeah, I have a baby at home. And I said, yeah, and her baby's in there, and she's going to go back there, and we're going to get her a wheelchair. So if you could move aside, we're going to get her a wheelchair, and she'll go back. And she was able to. They moved, I think quickly their hearts were moved, and then their bodies were moved. And she got to go and say goodbye to her son, and the heart was able to have its day. And I think, especially on this morning, that's why we come to church. This is a place where we can be fully human, in all our joys, in all our sorrows. This is a place where we can give each other the gift of letting our heart have its day, whatever that day involves. I am so glad you're with us this morning for this special service. I would ask if you would rise in body or in spirit and sing together our opening hymn, number 1001, in the teal hymnal,
Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah, whoosh, ah. Those who have died have never left. Dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the growing woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the lonely hills. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah, ah, ah. Those who have died and never that have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are in us in our homes. They are with us in this crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So listen to things that to things that to be. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah,
Now it's time for a story. This morning's story, I could use some helpers. If you're a small person or a large person and you want to come and listen to the story up close, you can come up now or anytime during the story. And if you'd like to help out with this story, I could use a hand. This morning's story is called The Mustard Seed, and it comes from Chinese Buddhism. So do I have any helpers tonight? Maria? Should I see your hand? Come on up. Thank you, Maria. The story goes like this. It starts like my first story, with a woman who had lost her son, and she was distraught. She was so sad that she went to the Buddha, and she said, "Please help me. You have to help me get my son back." And the Buddha said, "There's only one way to do that. And it's a simple potion. There's one ingredient, and it is a mustard seed. But you must find the mustard seed in the home that has never known sorrow." And so the woman went out and she knocked on a door, on her neighbor's door, and she said, "I need a mustard seed." And they said, "Sure, we've got plenty." And she said, "But wait, have you ever known sorrow here?" And the woman who had answered the door said, "Unfortunately, we have. We moved here years ago, but we still feel sad and grieving about our old home that we had to leave." And so the woman moved on, and she came and knocked on the next door of the next neighbor, and she said, "I need a mustard seed to borrow." And they said, "Of course, take what you need." And she said, "But first I have to ask, has your home ever known sorrow?" And they said, "Actually, just a few weeks ago, we lost our great-grandmother, and we're still in sorrow about that." She said, "Okay, never mind." And then she went down the street a little further, and she knocked on the next door, and she said, "I really need a mustard seed, but I need to know, has your home ever known sorrow?" And they said, "It has. Our son has gone away, and he's moved all the way across the country, and we don't see him very much anymore, and we miss him so terribly. We feel sorrow about it every day." And so she moved on back down the street the other way, and she checked on the other side of the street. She knocked on another door, and she said, "Please, has this home ever known sorrow? I need a mustard seed from a home that's never known sorrow." And they said, "I'm so sorry, we can't help you. We've known plenty of sorrow in our time." And they invited her in, and they talked about it. And this happened to the woman at every neighbor's house she visited, all up and down the street, all through the town, all through the outskirts of town. She visited every house, and she heard all about their sorrows. And finally, she came back to the Buddha, and she said, "I think I understand that you sent me on an impossible quest. But I also think I understand that I feel a little bit healed, because it turns out that I wasn't alone in my sorrow. It turns out that everybody in this whole town, and I suspect maybe in this whole world, knows how I feel. So thank you for sending me." And that is the end of our story. Thank you for helping me.
I can't remember the last time I could kneel like that. Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of time and money support our church in its work. Each week, we like to spotlight a group or committee and thank them for their gift of time. This week, the group is the Social Environmental Justice Committee. People interested in finding out more and participation can join us after the service today. 1/4 of our plate collection for the harvest season goes to the Greater Rochester Habitat for Humanity, who build strength, stability, and self-reliance through shelter. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or a check into the basket or by one of the options on your screen. Please make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this
Now is the time in our service for centering and meditation, followed by some shared silence. We remind ourselves quickly that by shared silence, we mean the absence of grown-ups talking to one another, so that we can listen more closely to the sounds of life, to the wind in the fall leaves outside, to the breath of our neighbor in their seats, to the wiggles and giggles of our children, to the beating of our own hearts. So I invite you to turn inward now, take a deep breath, Let it out with a sigh. Perhaps let your shoulders fall away from your ears. Let your body be supported by this good earth, by the chair beneath you, by the community around you. The 4-year-old, who doesn't understand time, asks, "Did I ever see a dinosaur back when I was young?" And no, I have to break it to him. There were no humans in the time of dinosaurs. Oh, what else did I miss the time of? Is the immediate response from the 4-year-old, who doesn't think about time like we do. And I don't mean it to, but a litany pours forth. You missed the time of the western black rhino, but I got to live in it. The time of the Pinta giant tortoise, too. We both lived in the time of the Yangtze River dolphin, but that appears to be over now. And your grandfather knew the time of the American chestnut, but you and I were both born too late. The time of the pu'uli ended just as your time began, and no one you've met was alive in the time of the Tasmanian tiger, but your ancestors were. Maybe a similar litany lives in you. Maybe you are keeping a record, a mournful record in your heart of all that we have lost too soon. Maybe the names of beloved creatures, animals, insects, fungi, plants, even humans, spring forth in your mind and sit on your tongue, waiting for their names to be added to this requiem of beloved dead. Maybe, it turns out, silence even among the grown-ups isn't all we need. So oddly today, go ahead. You can name these beloveds now. As a whisper, a shout, a firm, proud voice of memory, let your grief move you and say their names.
Passenger pigeon.
The 4-year-old, who understands the complexity of time, asks, "How long will the time of humans be?" And I don't know, but we forgive one another and ourselves. Beginning again in love is so very hard and so very worth it. Amen. And this Sunday is not like a typical Sunday. So there is a message about grief. But I need a little help again. I wonder if there are any small folks or big folks who would like to come up to the front again and help me with this message. You can bring your coloring with you. And I'm wondering if you have some questions about grief. I have some questions for you. And let's start with the big question while you get settled in, which is, what is grief? Does anybody have an idea about what we mean when we say that? Rory? Sadness? I think that's a really good place to start. I think of grief as a kind of particular sadness that has to do with loss, right? And not loss like you've lost something and you can't find it and you don't know where it is, although sometimes you do feel grief about that. But loss like someone you loved or a pet that you loved is gone. Maybe they died or moved away, or maybe a favorite stuffy gets left at an airport, or maybe a piece of art you worked so hard on gets juice spilled on it by a younger sibling. Maybe you move and you have to get used to a new home, or maybe your parents decide not to be together anymore and your family looks different from how it used to. All of these things might feel like loss, and loss feels like grief. I wonder if you've ever felt something like that. Does anybody have a time where they felt grief? You do? Maybe. Gotta think about it. What about big folks? Anybody ever have a time where you felt loss so big that it was grief in your heart? Bob has. Nancy and Laura and lots of us have felt it. I wonder if you have any questions about grief or loss. Lori, right away with the question. Go for it. You can. You got to think about it for a little bit. While Rory thinks, anyone else have a question about loss, about grief, about that particular kind of sadness?
How do you make it better?
How do you make it better? What a good question. Has anyone found an answer? I don't know that I have. But I do think it's a little, do you have an answer to how do you make it better, Ewan? Go ahead.
Eat ice cream.
Eat ice cream. Honestly, I think that's a really good answer. Yeah, that's got to be part of the solution. I think sometimes deciding that it's okay to be sad, even if it's a small grief, any kind of change, any kind of loss is hard. And so it's hard to let go, and then you end up with this big, strong feeling of sadness, even over a little thing sometimes. But deciding that it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel grief, I think helps make it better in a certain way. And I think being together in our grief, like we learned in the story, I think that helps too. I don't know if it makes it go away, but I think it maybe makes it easier to carry. Anyone else have a question about grief or loss or that kind of big sadness when something is gone? Tom does.
How do you accept it? You know, why, I push it away, I hide it, I try to make jokes about it. I don't fully embrace accept the feeling.
How do you accept the feeling? I think that's so hard, right? Because sometimes the impulse is to push it away, to just choose like no feeling instead of such a big feeling. And I think you have to find places where it feels the safest to let it in. And maybe, I hope, this can be one of those places. And maybe you're someone where alone is one of those places, or you have a special someone that you can be with and it feels safe to let that big feeling in. But finding a place where it doesn't feel as scary as it feels everywhere else, and just starting there, I think, is my technique. It's like start with your safest place to feel your biggest feelings. And then maybe with practice, you can feel them everywhere you go. Any other questions? You all are preaching a great sermon right now.
I think I'll feel a little grief. We have right this moment two cats that we've had for a very long time, and they're both, well, we talked about how they're in hospice at the moment. And so I think I and Ray, we're both grieving even though they're still there.
Yeah. So for anyone in the room or in the Zoom who couldn't hear, Lynn said they have two cats who are in a sort of hospice state. And she's feeling grief even though they're still there. And I think that's really real, that sometimes we start to grieve before someone's all the way gone. I have felt that way about my own pets, for sure. Even just sometimes when they were young puppies, thinking like, I'm knowing when you know with a pet that you'll have to live without them someday, thinking, how am I going to live without you? I know I'll have to. And I think sometimes it happens with humans if they have a chronic disease or as they're aging, we sort of pre-grieve. And I think that it's a totally normal way to get ready for that big feeling, is to like get a jump start on it or sort of experiment with where does it feel safe to feel this way. I think as long as it doesn't get in the way of feeling the joy and the love of the moment right then and there, right? Yeah. Did you have another question or you're just climbing? Climbing, okay. Be careful, please. Does anyone else have another big question about such a big feeling?
Just kind of an observation. Tears baffle me because sometimes I cry unexpectedly, and sometimes when I think I ought to be crying, I don't. And I don't understand that. I guess it's just defense mechanisms built up or something.
Yeah, so Nancy's really good observation is that sometimes tears come when you don't expect them, and then they don't come when you do expect them. And I think it is just like grief, that it doesn't play by the rules. It doesn't follow anybody's timeline or rules, and you want it to be like a nice little bell curve, that it happens in a predictable pattern, and it isn't. It's just chaotic. It comes when it comes, and it goes when it goes. Yeah. Any last questions? I'm sure we have lots of questions, but any last ones for this morning? Did you ever think of a story? Well, you can ask me at home.
And a question,
Yeah.
how do we prevent grief from being pathologized?
How do we prevent it from being pathologized, like in ourselves or out by others? Is what you
How
mean.
do we understand grief as part of the human experience and not something to necessarily take an antidepressant for necessarily?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, especially you're tying us right into the message I was hoping for this morning, especially because there's so much to grieve, right? The litany goes on and on of everything we've lost and are losing, and it feels like too much sometimes, and yet it's reasonable to grieve about. And I think when we are sort of in it together, when all of us have rituals like this and spaces like this where we say, no, this is sad. This is a loss. These losses are real, and it's normal and healthy and spiritually grounded to feel all these big feelings about them in chaotic ways, in ways that don't follow a predictable timeline. There's sort of a solidarity of grief in that way. And maybe, I don't know, but maybe that's part of the answer. That we have, that if we are with one another in our grief, then there's some solidarity of grief. Yeah. I think the thing about grief is that we can, if we're thinking about it in that way, really think about it like a gift, like a way that reminds us that we're interconnected. And how unmoored we are when we lose a part of that web of interconnection is a reminder of our place in it, of how lost we feel when we deal with loss. And I think it's hard to think of that feeling as a gift, but the alternative is that we don't think of it as a gift, and then we turn our grief into numbness or apathy or disconnection. I think the alternative to grief is cutting ourselves off from connection. And so grief, even though it hurts and even though it's hard and it's painful, it allows us to stay in mutual relationships. It allows us to stay connected. And I think that sometimes that grief, that connection is wide, and so that grief is really overwhelming. It's hard to look at the world and not feel overwhelmed by all the loss and our sense of what isn't fair about that, right? About how there's so much loss that shouldn't be. When we look at Gaza, when we look at school violence, at the prison industrial complex, at the climate crisis, it all feels like too much, right? It's a grief that's too heavy. And so numbness is a sort of natural instinct. Just don't feel it. But I think that the real solution that's there for us, the real solution that keeps us soft, that keeps us human, is to let our heart have its day, but have it together with one another. That it isn't too heavy if we carry it together. Our grief in that way can become a sort of resistance, right? A refusal to let these big losses, this big pain become normalized. To say, when we listen to our hearts hurting, no, this isn't normal and it shouldn't be. All of this loss is not okay and we won't stand for it. And I think grief keeps us soft enough, loving enough to work on healing those hard things. And it's our broken hearts, not our numb hearts, that build a better world. Or so we hope. And I think maybe here's where we say, may it be so. And amen. And if you'd like to make your way back to your seats, you can stay right here if you like. You do not have to go back to your seats. But we should clear a little path, because some people will come forward. But you can stay where you're comfortable. But you should get off the chair, yeah. So I get a little bit.
Let me get my shoe.
Okay.
I don't fly though.
I want to invite us now into a time of honoring all that we've had to let go of in the last year. So first we start with loved ones we have lost to death. And so I will invite you forward as you feel moved to light a candle in honor of a person or a beloved animal in your family that you've lost. You can do that silently, or you can speak their name into the microphone at the front. If you're joining on Zoom, you can type their names into the chat and we will light a candle for you here. And we'll start with the members of our congregation that we've lost to death this year. And so I want to invite Nancy forward to light a candle for Carol Schoonmaker first.
Having a little trouble. Let's try this one. Karen Schoonmaker lived in Honeoye and was a member of our congregation for quite a few years. Had a lot of changes in her life, I know, over the time that she was with us. and I hope some of you got to know her.
Thank you. And then I'll ask Maureen to light a candle for Joan Barron.
Joan has left me with a lot of gratitude about grief. You can feel a lot of grief, but you can also find a lot of gratitude. And she helped me with that. And I will never forget her.
And so now I want to invite you to come forward as you feel moved. If you've lost someone, to light a candle, speak their name into the microphone, or hold it in the silence of your heart.
Raymond Larson. Marlene Prescott. Brian.
Mary Beth's sister, Teresa. My longtime friend, Ray.
This is for Brendan Brady. And Joyce Case Miller.
For Dennis and Mary McGuire.
Scarlett Emerson. And Howard Levant.
This is a little different in that I'm lighting one for Kevin's mother that died. Kevin isn't here, and I think he wouldn't mind.
My longtime friend, John.
You may have noticed some leaves on your seats and pencils nearby. This morning, let these leaves be symbols of our grief. So I invite you to write or draw or imbue with thought whatever it is you're grieving this morning. Not the loss of friendship or human life, but whatever other big griefs lie on your heart. Take a moment with your leaf, and when you're ready, you can come and hang it on the tree. We can't remove our grief or box it up or hide it away, and we wouldn't want to. But this is a place, like the tree, that can hold its enormity. In the promise that we hold these things together, that we are with one another, our grief makes way for hope. So when you are ready, please come forward and hang your leaf.
Oh, I know your way is hard to see today. Bullets, they fly faster than mother's lullaby, and the sparrows cannot sing, for it is theirs to bring the souls of those lost babies back to the sky. So it is yours to sing, my child, my child, my Oh, it is yours to sing, my child, my wild, bright gleam, with love born in the cradle of time, courage, my little wolf. You sing now for all the children in the shadows, fearful, dark, cold, and lost. And courage, sing loudly now. The lost will hear you call and follow 10,000 voices in joy. Hatred is buried when the hour of miracles is born. Love is eternal, so courage, you beauties mine. It is yours to sing, my child, my wild, brightling, with love born in the cradle of time. Requiem, requiem. The question is not if, it was always when. But on, go on, my child. Hope is a prairie fire. But on, go on, my child. Hope is a prairie fire. So set your embers high, the summer wind.
I lift up as a blessing and a benediction these words from Eli Lawlett. The grief of the earth is more vast than the ocean, yet still I can feel it. In a teaspoon or a teacup, I take what can fit and allow it to crack me open so that I will always continue to ask what small piece of the great work that is needed is mine to do. In this way, that we join together and like ants, move our small pieces and move mountains. Friends, will you rise in body or in spirit and sing our closing hymn together? It's number 18 in the gray hymnal, What Wondrous Love.
Our chalice has extinguished itself, but we will still speak the words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.